Our next presenter is Rhea Miller. Rhea is a drinking water specialist with the Drinking Water Quality Team in the Drinking Water Standards section. She has a BS in both chemistry and biology from Texas Tech University. Rhea has worked for TCEQ since 2019. As a DBP compliance officer, she serves as the primary compliance officer for DBP and OEL compliance programs. Rhea?
Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk to y'all about the operational evaluation report, everybody's favorite subject, at least mine anyways. And I think everybody likes it, but I probably talk a few people's ears off, so I digress. So a few terms to get us started. So some main terms that I'll use today is OEL for operational evaluation level. OER, which can sometimes be interchangeable with OEL, which stands for Operational Evaluation Report. So that's the document that you submit to us. The LRAA is the Locational Running Annual Average. The DBP, whenever you hear that, think disinfection byproduct. You'll see that it's for the TTHM and HA5, that's DBP, so total trihalomethane halacetic acid. I'll also say MCL, which is the maximum contaminant level, VOC, which is volatile organic chemicals. So the purpose of the operational evaluations, all of it, is to identify the causes of your DBP issues, to address that issue, and then prevent future exceedances. So our goal, using the operational evaluations and operational evaluation report, is to help you in the long run prevent DBP violations, which nobody likes DBP MCL violations, right? If anybody does, I'd be really surprised. Even I don't, and that's my program. So whenever I say MCL violations, the levels at which an MCL violation occurs is where the locational running annual average, so the location where you're having an exceedance, the annual average exceeds the MCL, which is 80 micrograms per liter or 0.08 milligrams per liter. For TTHM and HA5, it's 60 micrograms per liter, translated there on the screen to milligrams per liter. Here I have an example of the locational running annual average. This is using third quarter data of some random, I made it up kind of, so it's not an actual system. But here you'll see, and I'm gonna try not to shine in your eyes, we have the third quarter right here, and then the 3 previous quarters. So it's a running annual average, so that average is going to translate every quarter. So, and here we have where it adds up, it's actually under the MCL. So that level does not, this system would not get an MCL violation. Woo-woo. However, for the OEL, it's the same, it's compared against the MCL, but it's calculated a little bit differently. It is also locational, so if you exceed at one location, you'll be triggering for the requirement, and that's the same level, so 80 micrograms for TTHM, 60 for HA5. So here I have our little example. It's the same system, same numbers, but as you see, we use the current quarter twice. So this is basically saying, if I were to use this value again, if I were to get this value again next quarter, I'll be exceeding that level and I'll be getting an MCL violation. So I want to address this level before it actually becomes a violation. So here we see that the same system triggered the OEL. So this is basically to say, let me stop here, look at my system, see what's going on, and fix it before it actually becomes a violation. So very proactive thinking. So here's just me kind of explaining the differences in formulas. The LRAA, again, is different from the OEL. They are two different calculations altogether. As you saw, one has 4 quarters, one uses 3, with one of the quarters being used twice. So the OEL requirement does not replace, if you get an MCL violation at the same time of having the requirement, which can happen, it will not replace the stuff that you need to do for an MCL violation. And again, calculated completely differently. This next slide here shows side-by-side comparison. So this column here is the OEL, and this is the LRAA. So see, we have 2 of the same quarter here, and then the previous 2 quarters. And then here we have only 1, and then 3 previous quarters. So 4 quarters, 3 quarters. So that's pretty much it down to a science. That's the best way I can kind of display it. So if your system does trigger the requirement, if y'all's calculation comes up to over that 80 or 60 for TTHM and HA5, as a courtesy, TCEQ, once we get those results, we'll send you a reminder letter to let you know, hey, by the way, we noticed that you exceeded the OEL, so we need you to submit that report to us, but, I'm so sorry, I shined that right in your eye, by this due date right here. And this is like the 3rd paragraph on that letter. On the top of the letter, it'll designate if it's LRAA or OEL, so even the headers of the letters are different. They kind of sound the same, but they're completely different letters. Again, completely different programs under the same umbrella. So I keep saying report, right? Report, report, report. So every system that triggers the OEL, their level is over that 80 or 60, they have to submit a report to TCEQ. This basically documents that evaluation, and it helps you go through that evaluation that you're required for that OEL requirement. So you'll want to submit that. It's basically set up kind of like a checklist. So it'll ask yes or no questions. Did you check this? Did you check that? Blah, blah, blah. And you can go through it step by step in your system to kind of systematically look and see what's going on. The report itself is due to us 90 days after you receive the sample results from the lab, not from when we send the reminder letter. So there are a couple of systems, very, very rare circumstances where it is the reminder letter, but for a majority of systems, it's going to be when you receive those results. And I recommend we have the way the report is set up, you can actually enter the data as you receive it from the lab into that report, and you can calculate using that report your OEL value. So you can actually see if it's going to be over the level that triggers this requirement. So you can use that report also outside of being required to submit it. Failure to submit this report in a timely manner will result in an operational evaluation, monitoring and reporting violation. I don't like issuing them. We try and call y'all to let y'all know and get the fixes before they're actually issued. So if you ever get a call from either me or my coworker Stefan, then please work with us. We're trying to work with you guys to make sure we get the correct documentation to us in time before it becomes a violation. We do have new OERs. We released them last year, but a lot of systems are still submitting old reports to us. So just be aware we do have new reports, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about like the changes that we've done to those reports. They're now source water specific. So if you purchase raw surface water or you use groundwater under the influence of surface water, you're going to want to fill out Form A, which is surface water and groundwater under the influence. Groundwater rule, or groundwater, just in general, if you fully use groundwater, then you'll want to use the groundwater report. And then we also have purchase systems, and what's not included in there is the groundwater under the influence purchase. So if you're not sure what designation y'all are, typically on Drinking Water Watch, under the water system detail information, it's kind of that top header where it has your PWS ID, your name, everything. You'll find your primary source type that we have listed in CIDWIS and Drinking Water Watch there. So I have it circled. So we updated the OER last year, like I said. We've reorganized it to make it a little bit better, less clunky to go through. We've also reformatted it so it's visually easier to look at. Before it was like in these tables and kind of dark spots, light spots. It didn't print out right for some people. So now it looks a lot better. We've also updated several questions. So here I have an example of one of the questions that we added. We have several systems that have installed aeration to treat chloroform specifically for TTHMs. So we've added that in there. And we've also added a little note on the bottom. So in the old report, the notes were all on the back, and you had to dig through, try and figure out which note belongs to which question. Now it's super simple, right underneath the question. If you need more information about that specific question, the note's there for you to view. So let's talk a little bit about DBP formation. I won't go too much into the weeds about this, but DBP formation typically occurs due to water age, organic and inorganic material interacting with disinfectant to produce DBPs. It can be pH related. Typically with lower pH water, we see more halacetic acid issues. With higher pH water, we see TTHM issues. It can be temperature related, so we see a lot of DBPs coming in summertime. Sometimes we'll see it also for some systems in the winter time when that water use is not really high. So there can be things having to do with temperature or seasons that you don't really think about until it's already too late. It could also be disinfectant levels. So like if you are changing to a disinfectant type from chloramine to free chlorine, we typically see an increase in DBPs just because free chlorine interacts with those organic and inorganic materials in the source water. Another thing is if you have something go wrong with your chlorinator and it's putting out all of this chlorine, then of course we're going to see an increase in DBPs, right? More chlorine for it to interact with. So before you start your report, your evaluation, you're going to want to gather up all of your data together to kind of get ready to fill out this report. That includes the DBP results, the things that triggered the requirement, right? You'll also want to gather your volatile organic chemical results, which those are taken at the entry point for systems that are producing their own source, or producing their own water and treating their own water. Purchase systems, you don't typically see volatile organic chemical or VOC data just because like their providing systems are the ones that are monitoring for that. So y'all might not have that data, but systems like surface water system, groundwater under the influence, or groundwater systems who aren't purchasing, y'all will have that data. And you can look at that. You'll also want your raw and treated water data. This is specific to surface water and groundwater under the influence. You'll want to look at that to see if there were any fluctuations historically and presently to see, like, was there a water quality change that I need to consider? so that looking forward, if this happens again, I can see where like my triggers are, where I need to start kind of thinking of doing something a little bit different with my treatment process. You'll also want your field data, which includes pH, temperature, etc. Another wonderful thing that we have that the EPA has provided us is the EPA OEL Guidance Manual that they put out whenever the Stage 2 rule came out. So some of the information is a little not as current as what we understand DBPs now, but it's still got a ton of valuable information as far as like treatment goes and mitigation techniques that can be used, especially for systems that have DBPs related to water age. So highly recommend. It's a long read. It's not one that you want to sit by the fireplace and just enjoy, but it's definitely an important resource that you can use. We have some in the TA room along that wall, so feel free to grab one, take a look, take a gander. So we'll talk about now the organization of the OER. So this is kind of the meat and bones of what I'm looking for and what the report looks like. So there are 6 sections listed here. The first one is, of course, monitoring results. That one's going to be the most important resource that you're going to need. Basically, on that page, it doesn't look like much. There's a big table that wants you to type in all of your monitoring results, previous quarters and current, etc. And then it's going to ask you about previous exceedances. If you've ever had them, if you have ever had anything like this happen before, has your providing system had this happen before? So as I said, the page doesn't look like much. But what you need to understand is that these are your most important resource. They can tell you where and when and what is causing your DBPs. So if you're seeing high numbers in the summer, well, that tells you that it could be temperature related, right? We're seeing high numbers, well, the temperature goes up. You can compare the sample results in your distribution to the the VOC data from your entry point and see where your exceedances are occurring. If you're already exceeding at your entry point with that VOC data, then that tells you that it's not even water age related. It might be treatment related. So whenever I say, like, these are your most important resources, these tell you, like, what you're looking for. Another part of like what might be causing your DBPs is we have identified that there are 2 main types of DBPs. We have chlorinated, where they have chloro in the name, and then we have brominated, which have bromo in the name. Brominated can be a little bit more tricky to deal with. They typically are caused by bromide in the source water interacting with free chlorine or di or trichloramines, both of those. So they're a little bit harder to treat because you can't just flush your line because that's not going to solve your issue, right? They can't be treated with aeration. Chloroform, we find, is most effectively treated, which is a chlorinated species, which that one's the most effectively treated with aeration. But the other ones, not so much. The next section is going to be the source water evaluation. This is also a pretty important section. I mean, all sections are important to me. I'll probably say that for every slide I show on here. But this one also talks about your source types, if there was a source change. If your raw water data was abnormal, this is where you're going to want to list that. It also has a question about watershed. So last year, we actually saw an influx in DBP issues. It was due to the to major rain events around East Texas area. We had a lot of lakes that were turning over, and it was causing a lot of DBP issues because they weren't used to seeing some of these organics that they were seeing, and some of the quality kind of changed due to those rain events, those flood events, and that turnover that we would see. So pay attention to some of these questions. They may seem like, oh, that's a whatever, but honestly, all of these questions are very valuable, and it will give you a little bit more insight as well as us a little bit more insight. The next one is also the most important page, right? So this one's a treatment and disinfectant evaluation. So this one talks about your treated water data after the treatment. So the first one was raw water, this one's treated water. Sometimes some people get those confused, but whatever. This is also where you're going to be talking about your VOC data, because that happens at the entry point. So right after treatment. This will also talk about disinfectants. If you're a purchase system, this will have a question about, does your providing system use the same disinfectant as you? That's something to always consider. Treatment, as well as if there were any failures or process changes during your treatment process. It sounds kind of like a silly question to ask, but really think about it. Like, did we change something? Did we add a different chemical this time? The disinfection part of this page, it'll ask questions about your maintenance. Have you checked your chlorinator recently? It'll ask about your dosage. What is your chlorine to ammonia ratio? Some systems don't actually know the answer to that. And you need to ask yourself, do you know the answer to that? If you don't, then you kind of need to start thinking about, well, process control, I would want to know the chlorine to ammonia ratio so that I know I'm producing a proper chloramine. And then there's a question on here for surface water systems specifically, asking about pre-chlorination. And whenever I say this, I mean where you're hitting the raw water to get that deactivation. If you're hitting it with free chlorine, that can just, before even TOC is removed, you're already causing DBPs. So that's also something to consider. The volatile organic chemicals, as I said, they're taken at the entry point. They're typically taken every year. There are some systems that sample quarterly or less frequently, but a majority of them that I've seen, they're yearly. You can find that on Drinking Water Watch. If you're not sure where to find that, you can always call me. I'll happily walk you through. So some purchasing systems do have to take volatile organics, especially if an upstream system had a detection. So that's where you'll see if you're a purchasing system and you're taking these samples, that's why. TTHM specifically are made from, or are 4 chemicals put together, and I could read these off, but I don't, I don't really have the time for that. So these are the 4 chemicals that make up TTHMs. It's also listed out in the VOC question in the note. It has the VOCs written. You can view this data. You can find the VOC data in Drinking Water Watch under either other chemical results. If you have the sample ID from the lab, you can look in other chemical results and look specifically for that sample ID. If you're not sure, which a lot of systems aren't, it's okay. You can look in chemical results, sort by either name or code. If you sort by name, that might be a little bit easier. You can find it alphabetically, chloroform or bromoform. When you're looking at the results table, you're going to want to look for entry point. So that's going to be your VOC data. So for this system specifically, they had it collected in 2021, see? But they haven't had one recently. And here I have a close-up of it, just to better see. The next important page, which is also the most important page, is your distribution evaluation. That's where it's going to ask about a lot of things. It's going to be the storage tank, the water use, Storage tanks, water use, temperature, residual pH, flushing, repairs, maintenance, booster disinfectant, complaints from your customers, because believe it or not, your customers can also be a good resource. They can tell you if they smell chlorine or if there was a line break or something, and that can introduce some issues and cause DBPs. Believe it or not the customers, of course, just you can get it from their complaints and kind of catch it. So the storage tanks, of course, have new questions. I posted one earlier talking about aeration. There's a question about aeration on both the treatment page and the storage tank page. And it'll ask about maintenance as well for your storage tank. So it'll ask if you've actually gotten your storage tank serviced. We've also rewritten a couple of questions. The one that tripped up a whole bunch of people was the question that was asking, does your storage tank do first in, last out? And a lot of people would mix it up thinking it's the other way around. So we've revamped that question to ask, is the freshest water going into your storage tank the first to leave your storage tank? Because if so, then you're not getting a proper turnover of your tank, right? So that's the main question there. The temperature, disinfectant, residual, and pH, a lot of people don't know that this information is actually on Drinking Water Watch. Every time our samplers go out to collect a chemical sample, we actually collect the pH, the temperature, that made me right at your head, and the residual right here. So you can actually pull that information from Drinking Water Watch, and that's going to be under the other chemical results. So we've added new questions for repairs, maintenance, and booster disinfectant. Specifically about booster disinfectant, are you boosting with the same type of disinfectant as you're using in the treatment? Because some systems actually do make it free chlorine, not really realizing they're thinking that they're just, upping the dosage a tiny bit to push it through, but they're really breakpoint chlorinating. So this asks basically like, are you boosting, are you using the same disinfectants as in your treatment process to kind of help you think about, am I, to get those little gears whirling. The last page is, what are y'all doing? So this used to be like a whole bunch of check boxes. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing that, and you would just check off. I didn't like it. It didn't give me enough information. If a system is having an issue and, they just checked flushing, well, yeah, that's great, but are y'all coming up with a whole new plan? Are y'all increasing the amount that you're flushing? Are you flushing in different areas? Different things like that. So the old way didn't really tell me very much. The new way is kind of short answer. You can still be very brief. We're flushing more often, or we're installing a flush valve, or installing an automatic flush valve, or we're looping the dead end or whatever. So you can actually put that in here. And we have 3 subsections. We have the source water, treatment, and disinfectant or distribution system. Sorry, a lot of D words with disinfection byproducts, right? So we have the distribution system. So this is the different areas that you can change certain things to help reduce the DBPs. If you don't put an action, if you don't put a comment on here, it's considered incomplete. It will be sent back to you saying, no. You can't just fill out all of these questions and then not tell us what you're changing to fix the issue. So whether that be if it's for a purchase system, if you're communicating more effectively with the upstream systems, that totally works as well. So that can go on the bottom. We have another comment section just for miscellaneous stuff. You can put that in there. We're communicating more effectively. We're putting in this program to kind of help keep an eye on our treatment or whatever. So just make sure you at least fill out something on this section. I will do a plug for financial, managerial, and technical assistance. I'm sure everybody has a slide that has to do with FMT. I know this is my second presentation, and my other presentation also has the same slide, but I'm serious. These guys go out, it's free to all public water systems. They go out and assist you guys to basically get y'all trained and, you know, help you with problems that you're not really sure of. They have so many different programs that they can help you with, whether it be from your disinfectant to even answering like questions about how do I look at drinking water watch. They can help you with that. If you're not very computer savvy and you're wanting to learn drinking water watch, they can help you. They can do all of it. So highly recommend these guys. It's done by TRWA, is our contract with TCEQ. You can either email me or you can email that FMT inbox. It's however you want to do it. You can give me a call, you can call the main line asking for FMT. We'll get you taken care of. And you just need to tell us what you need, what type of assistance you need, and we can get you right on track. So, the last page, sorry, there's a question on that actions page that has to do with FMT, so that's why it's there. But on the last page, which is the most important page, right? It's a signature. We need your signature, whether that be electronically verified through Adobe Acrobat or you print it out and sign it yourself. We need a signature. If it's not signed, we'll send it back to you and say, sorry, we can't accept this. So make sure that you sign it before you send it. We'll also we'll need your contact information in case we identify something that's not quite complete in the report so that we can get those corrections. So make sure if you're the one that filled out that report, you're the one listed as a contact. The monitoring and reporting violations. This is not my favorite part, obviously. I don't ever like issuing violations. It's not the part of my job that I like. My team lead is actually sitting over here, and he'll tell you the same thing. I don't like sending out violations. So please, if you're required to submit an OER to us, please do it. The OER is due within 90 days, again, of receiving the lab results. If you don't, then you could get a violation. We'll give you a ton of calls to try and get that report to us. So just work with us, be patient with us. If you have any questions, concerns, even if you have a complaint about my presentation or my speaking skills, you know, you can always give me a call. You can email me. I'm happy to answer any sort of questions. My coworker, Stefan, he's the one that does the reviews, the initial reviews for the OERs. So you'll probably be in more contact with him than me, but both of us can answer any sort of questions that you have. With the DBP inbox, I put that on there because that's way easier to spell than my name or Stefan's name. Sorry, Stefan, but yeah, I highly recommend reaching out to us. Thank you, guys.